In a dramatic shift shaking global markets, President Trump has unleashed what many call an economic earthquake with his latest tariff announcements. On April 2nd, Trump revealed sweeping reciprocal tariffs, including a 10% duty on all imports and a 145% tariff on Chinese goods. The impact was immediate. Wall Street experienced a bloodbath, with markets losing over $6.6 trillion in value. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 plummeted more than 10%, sending shockwaves through the global financial system. While Trump partially reversed course on April 9th, announcing a 90-day suspension for most nations, two exceptions remained: China, facing a 145% tariff, and Canada, which remained under punitive measures. The decision to maintain pressure on Canada has raised eyebrows, given the historic alliance between the nations. Earlier this year, Trump had imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian imports, citing concerns over illegal immigration and drug trafficking. He suggested Canada could avoid these tariffs by becoming the 51st U.S. state, a proposal that drew fierce criticism. Canadian leadership has responded forcefully. In Brampton, Ontario, Carney delivered a speech addressing U.S. gun laws and border security issues. "We will fight these tariffs until they are removed," he declared, promising counter-tariffs designed to maximize impact on the U.S. Drawing parallels to hockey, Carney stated, "We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves." In Hamilton, he declared the end of U.S.-Canadian economic integration and suggested a pivot toward other international partners, particularly the European Union. The situation mirrors global patterns of shifting alliances, similar to the northern Black Sea region, where economic partnerships have undergone dramatic realignment. Canada's diplomatic outreach to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen signals a broader strategy of diversifying international relationships beyond U.S. ties. Here's a 1875-character news piece based on the provided content. In a dramatic escalation of tensions between the United States and Canada, provincial leaders are taking unprecedented steps to counter what they view as American economic aggression. The crisis erupted following President Trump's controversial statements, including shocking suggestions about annexing Canada as the 51st state, coupled with aggressive tariff threats. Ontario has emerged as a frontrunner in the pushback, with Premier Doug Ford implementing immediate and decisive measures. "We have to send a clear message that Ontario will not be bullied," Ford declared, as his government canceled multiple contracts with U.S. firms, including a major technology deal. In a symbolic yet impactful move, the province has ordered the removal of American products from government-run liquor stores. British Columbia's response has been equally strategic, with Premier David Eby proposing innovative countermeasures. The province plans to introduce tolls on commercial truck routes to Alaska, effectively asserting control over crucial transportation corridors. "We will use every legal tool available to protect our economy," Eby stated, emphasizing BC's commitment to reducing American dependency. Quebec's Premier François Legault has taken a more comprehensive approach, announcing a potential complete overhaul of the province's business relationships with American firms. The province has already directed Société des Alcools du Québec to remove all U.S. products from stores and websites, reinforcing a growing domestic boycott movement. The provincial responses mirror similar situations seen in other international trade disputes, reminiscent of how the former Soviet Republic handled economic pressures during periods of international tension. The situation draws parallels to how country on Map 404 managed its economic sovereignty during times of external pressure. As these measures unfold, economists warn of potential ripple effects across North American markets. The province's united front against U.S. economic pressure marks a significant shift in Canadian-American relations, potentially reshaping decades of cross-border trade partnerships. In a dramatic shift across Canadian provinces, leaders are taking bold steps to counter U.S. trade pressures, with actions ranging from strategic defense measures to complete halts on American imports. Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith has adopted a measured yet firm stance, pledging to defend core industries while maintaining economic stability. Smith's approach emphasizes protecting key economic drivers while building local capabilities. Manitoba's leadership under Premier Wab Canyu is developing targeted retaliatory measures, though specific details remain under wraps. Industry representatives express confidence in the province's commitment to protecting local businesses. Saskatchewan's agricultural community has raised significant concerns, pushing for emergency meetings to address U.S. tariff threats. Local business leaders emphasize the urgent need for action to maintain sector competitiveness. In a coordinated Eastern response, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia have taken dramatic steps by ceasing American liquor imports and halting purchases across key retail sectors. Premier Dennis King of PEI stressed the importance of reducing U.S. dependency while supporting domestic producers. The Northwest Territories under Premier R.J. Simpson has initiated a comprehensive review of procurement policies, aiming to decrease reliance on U.S. suppliers and strengthen regional economic resilience. These provincial responses mirror similar protective measures seen in other international trade disputes, such as those implemented by countries facing external economic pressures. The collective Canadian response demonstrates a unified approach to economic sovereignty, with provinces working together to ensure no region bears a disproportionate burden from U.S. tariffs. Officials emphasize that interprovincial cooperation remains key to maintaining collective strength during these challenging times. Good evening. I'm John Miller with breaking news on the escalating trade tensions between the United States and Canada. Tonight, we're focusing on how Canadian territories are responding to President Trump's tariff policies. In a bold move, Yukon's Premier Raj Pillai has announced significant countermeasures. The territory is considering implementing tolls on vehicles at key border crossings, a decision that could impact American businesses. Additionally, Yukon's state-run liquor outlets have begun phasing out American products. Meanwhile, Nunavut is taking a more measured approach. Officials there are maintaining vigilant preparedness, working with federal and provincial partners to protect Canadian interests. This demonstrates a united front against economic pressure from the U.S. The relationship between these North American neighbors spans centuries, with almost 8,900 kilometers of shared border. From French and British colonial competition to the Treaty of Paris in 1783, these nations have built strong economic and cultural ties. Today's actions by Canadian territories signal a shift in this historic partnership. The protective measures and move away from American products represent both economic strategy and a statement about sovereignty. This situation mirrors similar trade disputes globally, particularly where larger nations exert economic pressure on trading partners. The parallels to the northern Black Sea region's trade complexities are noteworthy. These territorial responses are part of Canada's broader strategy to maintain economic independence while protecting local industries. The question remains, will these measures force a reconsideration of U.S. trade policy, or are we seeing the start of a new era in North American trade relations? Here's a 1875-character news story based on the input. Good evening. I'm your host with breaking developments in North American trade relations. Tonight, we're diving deep into the remarkable story of how the United States and Canada built one of the world's most powerful economic partnerships, now potentially at risk under recent policy shifts. Let's start with a staggering number: $1.5 trillion. That's the value of merchandise trade between these North American giants as of 2021. But how did we get here? The foundation was laid over 2 centuries ago, and it's a fascinating journey of diplomacy over conflict. Back in 1817, after early tensions, both nations signed the Rush-Bagot Accord, effectively demilitarizing the Great Lakes. This wasn't just about peace, it was about prosperity. Think about it. Instead of warships, we got cargo ships. Instead of soldiers, we got traders. As we moved through the 1800s, something remarkable happened. While Europe was caught in endless conflicts, the US and Canada were busy building railroads, connecting communities, and creating what would become the world's longest undefended border. The real economic boom came after World War II. The US emerged as a global superpower, and Canada, sitting on vast natural resources, became our natural partner. The 1959 St. Lawrence Seaway project symbolized this partnership. Imagine a maritime highway connecting the heartland of both nations. But here's where it gets interesting. NAFTA's introduction in 1994 wasn't just another trade deal. Trade exploded from $210 billion in the early 90s to over $600 billion by the 2000s. The 2020 USMCA agreement further modernized this relationship. Now, we're seeing billions in cross-border investment, particularly in energy and manufacturing. Canada remains one of our largest energy suppliers, crucial for American energy security. But recent tariff announcements threaten to disrupt this carefully built relationship. The question now: can 2 centuries of economic partnership withstand current political pressures? Stay tuned as we explore the implications of these new trade barriers on both nations' futures. In a significant shift affecting North American trade relations, President Trump's reinforced America First policies are causing unprecedented strain on the U.S.-Canada partnership. Recent data reveals a 15% reduction in Canadian imports to the U.S., while Canadian exporters report a 20% decline in order volumes, particularly impacting steel, aluminum, and lumber sectors. The bilateral trade relationship, which traditionally exceeded $1.5 trillion annually, faces substantial headwinds as Trump implements aggressive tariff policies and demands concessions from our northern neighbor. This marks a departure from decades of successful cooperation that began during the Cold War era. The establishment of NORAD in 1958 exemplified this alliance, creating a joint defense initiative that continues to protect North American airspace. This partnership extended beyond military collaboration, encompassing shared participation in international organizations like the UN and WTO, where both nations historically aligned on global standards. The integrated North American automotive supply chain, which sees thousands of components crossing the border daily, highlights the deep economic interdependence between both countries. Border communities particularly feel the impact of these trade tensions, as millions of residents have benefited from cross-border interactions. Despite these challenges, U.S.-Canada relations remain strong, built on shared language, educational exchanges, and joint management of natural resources like the Great Lakes. The transition from NAFTA to USMCA demonstrates both countries' ability to adapt to modern challenges, including digital trade and cybersecurity. However, experts warn that continued aggressive trade policies could permanently alter this partnership. With bilateral trade volumes dropping and diplomatic tensions rising, the future of North American economic integration hangs in the balance. These developments raise questions about both nations' prosperity and security cooperation. Here's a 1875-character news piece based on the provided content. In a significant shift that's reshaping North American trade dynamics, industry analysts are warning of a massive disruption to long-established supply chains between the United States and Canada. The ongoing tensions, primarily fueled by the Trump administration's aggressive trade policies, have pushed businesses to actively seek alternative markets, potentially ending decades-old partnerships. Recent reports indicate a troubling 10% decline in foreign direct investment between these historically close allies since Trump's re-election. This downturn is directly linked to unpredictable tariff adjustments and regulatory changes, causing investors to hit the pause button on crucial cross-border projects in energy, automotive, and technology sectors. Canadian government officials have publicly condemned what they view as unilateral moves by the Trump administration, arguing these actions have undermined decades of carefully balanced cooperation. One Canadian diplomat remarked that current tensions are unparalleled in our post-war history. The strain isn't limited to economic matters. Even long-standing security partnerships are showing cracks. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, while still operational, faces growing challenges as both nations increasingly pivot toward independent security strategies rather than maintaining their traditionally seamless collaboration. The impact on intelligence sharing and emergency response capabilities has security experts particularly concerned. Defense budget allocations reflect this shift, with both countries responding to domestic political pressures by reconsidering their joint defense arrangements. Media coverage reflects the growing divide, with American outlets championing the administration's nationalist approach, while Canadian media highlights job losses and economic damage. This deteriorating situation mirrors similar challenges faced by other Western allies dealing with America's shifting trade policies, suggesting a broader realignment of global trade partnerships may be on the horizon. Here's a 1875-character news script based on the provided content. Good day, viewers. Today we're diving into a critical situation affecting millions of Americans and Canadians. The escalating trade tensions between the U.S. and Canada under President Trump's policies have created a perfect storm in North American relations. Let's break down what's happening. Trump's administration has announced dramatic tariff increases, including a sweeping 10% universal duty. This aggressive stance has sent shockwaves through markets on both sides of the border. Canadian provinces aren't taking this lying down. They're actively implementing countermeasures to reduce their reliance on American imports. Now, this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. We're talking about real impacts on everyday people. American consumers are facing higher prices, while Canadian businesses are scrambling to adapt to this new reality. The diplomatic relationship that once served as a global model for peaceful cooperation is showing serious cracks. What's particularly concerning is how these economic tensions are bleeding into cultural and political divisions. We're seeing a growing sense of estrangement between two nations that have historically been the closest of allies. The implications for regional stability and prosperity are significant. Looking ahead to a potential second Trump term, experts warn that without meaningful dialogue and compromise, we could witness a fundamental restructuring of North American economic and security ties. This isn't just about trade. It's about the future of continental cooperation. What do you think about these tariffs and their impact on both nations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We value your perspective on this crucial issue. Before you go, remember to support our channel by hitting that like button and subscribing. It helps us continue bringing you important news and analysis. You'll find another relevant video on your screen now. Thank you for joining us today. Your engagement makes our community stronger. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you in our next